Imagine a single human being responsible for the death of 1 in every 10 people on Earth.
Not through some abstract policy or economic collapse, but directly, with fire and steel. A man whose armies killed on such a scale that they literally altered the planet's climate.
Humanity's carbon footprint shrank for the simple, brutal reason that tens of millions of farmers stopped tilling their fields and stopped breathing. Their cities were razed. In their place, forests reclaimed the land, absorbing an estimated 700 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere. This is not the plot of an apocalyptic film. It is the tangible legacy of the man known to the world as Genghis Khan.
And here lies the paradox. A man who left such a colossal, bloody footprint on history simply vanished upon his death, dissolved without a trace. His tomb, the greatest secret of the Mongol Empire, guarded for nearly 1,000 years.
This was no accident. The tomb was hidden with a fanaticism, a ruthlessness that rivaled his own conquests. Riverbeds were diverted to conceal it beneath the water. Entire forests were planted over the burial site to erase any sign. Those who took part in the funeral procession were executed to the last man, ensuring the secret died with them. Even the legends of its location, passed down through the centuries, were a carefully crafted deception, a smokescreen designed to lead the world astray.
Historians have searched, explorers have failed. The tomb was never meant to be found. But now, in our own century, the impossible may have happened. The veil of secrecy has begun to fray, and what has been uncovered is more than a rewriting of history. It is a revelation that has the power to stun the world.
To comprehend the scale of this secret, one must first comprehend the scale of the man. He was not born Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. He was born Temujin, into the harsh, windswept steppes of Mongolia, and his childhood was a masterclass in survival. Exile, betrayal, starvation, captivity. These were his tutors. His father was poisoned. His family was abandoned by their own clan, left to die. He hid in the forests, subsisting on rodents and wild onions. These deprivations did not break him. They forged him. They taught him that loyalty is not a birthright, but a bond that must be earned, and that the tribal allegiances which had fractured the steppe for centuries were a fatal weakness. By the dawn of the 13th century, Temujin, having walked through fire, achieved the unthinkable. He united dozens of warring Mongol tribes under a single banner. But he did not merely demand their submission. He shattered the very foundations of their society. At the heart of his dominion lay a revolutionary military structure, one that rejected the ancient bonds of tribal fealty. He would replace the chaos of his youth with an empire of brutal, absolute discipline. An empire built on the ashes of the world he knew, and one whose greatest secret still lies buried, waiting to be unearthed. To forge this new world, he organized his forces with a stroke of brutal genius: the decimal system. Simple, elegant, and a complete shattering of the old tribal order. Units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 warriors, the Arban, the Jagun, the Mingan, and the Tumen. And command was not a birthright, it was earned. A shepherd from yesterday could lead 1,000 men tomorrow if he possessed the requisite cunning, courage, and loyalty. This radical meritocracy birthed an unheard-of efficiency, a loyalty forged not in the bonds of clan, but in the crucible of battle, a loyalty sworn to the commander,
and ultimately to the Khan himself.
His army was a living nightmare for any who stood against it. This was not a shambling mob of infantry, it was a single, terrifying organism of rider and horse. The Mongol learned to ride before he could walk. His warriors, primarily horse archers, could live for weeks in the saddle, subsisting on dried milk curd and, when necessary, blood drawn from the veins of their own mounts. Their warfare was a lethal dance the world had never witnessed. Lightning-fast cavalry assaults, where skies darkened with arrows, giving the enemy no time to even comprehend their doom. Feigned retreats, masterfully staged dramas that lured the overconfident into inescapable traps. And a ruthless psychological campaign. Rumors of Mongol brutality, carefully cultivated, galloped ahead of the army itself, compelling entire cities to surrender without a fight. They built pyramids of skulls to shatter the will of survivors. They drove captives before them as human shields in the next assault. Terror was now a weapon, as vital as the bow and the arrow. Between 1207 and 1225, Genghis Khan unleashed this war machine upon the great settled civilizations. He swept through the Tangut kingdom of Jizya and the Jurchen's Jin Empire in northern, choking ruins. But it was the Khwarezmian Empire, a vast domain stretching from Persia to Central Asia, that would feel the full, cataclysmic force of his rage. When the Shah executed the Khan's envoys, he did not declare war. He unleashed an apocalypse. The jewels of the Silk Road, Samarkand, Bukhara, Urgench, were besieged and erased from the face of the earth. Libraries were torched, their ancient knowledge turned to ash. Scholars and artisans were slaughtered or enslaved. There were few survivors. This was not mindless fury. It was strategic. Every obliterated city was a message to the next. Resistance is futile. Entire regions capitulated at the mere thunder of his approaching hooves, desperate to avoid the fate of those who had dared to defy him. But an empire cannot be built on conquest alone. It must be governed. And here, the warrior Genghis Khan makes way for the statesman. He was more than a destroyer. He was a visionary organizer. His great code of laws, the Yasa, imposed a rigid discipline and a stark form of justice across the vast, blood-soaked territories of his burgeoning empire. The same hand that razed cities to the ground also wrote the laws that would bind them together. It is the enduring paradox of the empire builder, that to create a new world, one must first be willing to utterly annihilate the old. His great law, the Yasa, protected diplomats, merchants, and even granted freedom of religion, a notion utterly alien to the age. While the fires of the Inquisition burned across Europe, he recruited administrators and scholars from conquered lands, Muslims, Chinese, and Persians. They would help build a vast empire that ran on a meritocratic bureaucracy, secure trade routes, and a legendary postal system known as the Yam. This network of horse-borne couriers, a kind of medieval internet, bound the empire together from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. Its riders could cover up to 300 kilometers in a single day, delivering decrees and intelligence with astonishing speed. The result was the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace, a rare period of stability across the Eurasian landmass that fueled an explosion of trade, innovation, and cultural exchange. The Great Silk Road, once plagued by bandits, now flourished under Mongol protection. Ideas, religions, and technologies flowed across borders as never before. Gunpowder journeyed west from China. Paper and the compass became the inheritance of Europe. Andart of Asia. When he finally died, his era of power did not end.
it merely transformed. But his death would give rise to a great mystery, one that no one could have foreseen. He passed as he had lived, on campaign, during a military action against the Western Xia dynasty in the territory of modern-day northwestern China. The precise date of his death is disputed. Some sources point to the 18th of August, 1227, others the 25th. This uncertainty only deepens the enigma surrounding the final chapter of his life. The conqueror, whose very name was a tremor felt from the steppes of Mongolia to the gates of Eastern Europe, departed the world under a veil of secrecy. Over the centuries, theories have multiplied, each offering a cause, but none providing conclusive proof. One version suggests he fell victim to disease, perhaps malaria, typhus, or even the plague that stalked the harsh conditions of a military campaign. Others contend he was mortally wounded by an enemy arrow during a siege. According to another account, he fell from his horse while hunting, suffering fatal internal injuries. Some legends even speak of a lightning strike, adding a mystical, almost divine element to the narrative. But one thing is certain. The news of his passing was not immediately revealed, neither to his army nor to the world. The Mongol leadership took extraordinary measures to ensure his death remained a closely guarded secret. They feared that an announcement during an ongoing campaign would demoralize their troops and embolden their enemies. To preserve order and control, his innermost circle began a final, silent deception, carrying the body of the unliving Khan as if he were still the master of the world. In death, as in life, the will of the great Khan was absolute. A cold and calculated design set in motion the moment his final breath escaped. His body was to return to the heart of the Mongol lands, a journey cloaked in the deepest secrecy. The location of his final rest remains one of history's most impenetrable enigmas, a mystery forged by the extreme measures taken to conceal it. The most chilling of these was the price of silence. According to legend, every soul who bore witness to the Khan's final journey was put to the sword. The military escort, the artisans who crafted the tomb, the slaves who broke the earth, all were silenced, ensuring the secret would never be spoken by a living tongue. An army of phantoms carrying their knowledge into oblivion. But the plan did not end there. To erase any trace of the burial, 1,000 horses were driven over the site, their hooves pounding the disturbed earth back into the seamless fabric of the steppe. The sacred ground was rendered indistinguishable from the endless plains surrounding it. In time, nature itself became the final guardian, reclaiming the land and burying the secret even deeper. This extraordinary effort created more than a hidden tomb. It created a legend. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and adventurers have pursued the truth of Genghis Khan's final resting place. The search has spanned from the whispers in ancient scrolls to the unblinking eye of modern satellites. Yet despite every technological advance, despite countless expeditions, the location remains unconfirmed. Beneath the physical veil of secrecy lies another, more profound layer, a spiritual one. The Mongols did not simply bury a leader, they entombed a legend, sealing it beneath layers of ritual and sacred protection that have endured for nearly 800 years. The effort was not merely to hide a grave, but to honor the spiritual legacy of a man considered not just a conqueror, but a figure of divine significance. Central to this mystery is a region known as the Ik-Korig, the Great Taboo. It is a vast, strictly guarded territory of roughly 240 square kilometers, centered around Burkhan Khaldun, a sacred mountain in northeastern Mongolia. This was the ancestral domain of the Khan, forbidden to all outsiders. For generations, it was patrolled by a special class of hereditary warriors, the Dark Had. These guardians were bound by oath, tasked not with protecting a tomb, but with preserving the sanctity of the land itself, ensuring no one would ever disturb the spirit who slept there.
The search for a physical location may one day end, but the true tomb of Genghis Khan may not be found in the earth. It exists in the silence of the steppe, in the reverence of a people, and in a secret so powerful it has outlasted empires. A final testament to a man who conquered the world and then commanded it to forget where he lay. For centuries they have guarded his peace. The Dark Had people, a living wall of tradition, performing rituals to keep the sacred land inviolate, ensuring the Khan's final resting place remains a secret held by the earth itself. Local folklore deepens the enigma. Legends whisper that the Mongols accomplished the impossible, diverting the entire course of the Onon River to flow over the tomb, a monumental act of engineering designed to wash away any trace of their leader's grave. To change a river's path in this remote and unforgiving terrain would have demanded an immense, almost fanatical effort. But for the Mongols, no task was too great when honoring their great Khan. Other stories tell of a forest, planted by human hands. Thousands of saplings were set in the soil to camouflage the landscape, to restore the illusion of untouched wilderness. Over generations, these trees grew, weaving the artificial into the natural, making discovery all but impossible. Nature itself became an accomplice in the concealment, with the region's permafrost sealing the tomb in a permanent embrace of ice and soil. Yet another layer of this mystery lies far from Mongolia, in Ordos, a region now part of China. Here stands a massive, imposing mausoleum built in honor of Genghis Khan. Its architecture is magnificent, drawing thousands of visitors each year. But for all its grandeur, the monument is hollow. It is widely acknowledged that the sarcophagi within are empty. The complex is a symbolic memorial, not a tomb, a grand misdirection that only fuels the speculation, deepening the question of where the true grave might lie. The rituals, the legends, and the deceptions have transformed the tomb of Genghis Khan into one of history's most profound puzzles. This enduring secrecy has long been a siren's call to archaeologists and historians, a challenge they were determined to meet. Despite the centuries of silence, the modern age has provided new tools to pierce the veil. From the vantage point of space, satellite imagery scans the vast terrain. On the ground, magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar listen for whispers from below the soil. One of the most notable modern quests was led by National Geographic explorer Albert Yumin Lin. His team focused their search on the Khenti Mountains of northeastern Mongolia, a region deeply intertwined with the Khan's life and a prime candidate for his death. The hunt is a collision of worlds, ancient reverence against modern curiosity, oral tradition against digital data. It is a search not merely for remains, but for the final, unwritten chapter in the story of a man who redrew the map of the world. Perhaps the ultimate testament to his power is not the empire he built, but the one secret he has managed to keep. The approach was revolutionary, a synthesis of ancient ground and modern sight. Albert Yumin Lin's project integrated local Mongolian volunteers with the most advanced visualization tools, creating a new paradigm: archaeology by crowdsource. A digital legion, thousands strong, scanned satellite imagery from across the globe, hunting for the subtle anomalies that might betray a hidden history. The team meticulously avoided breaking the earth, a profound gesture of respect for Mongolian cultural and spiritual beliefs. Their creed was to see through the soil without turning a single spade,
By analyzing satellite photography and deploying non-invasive technologies to detect subterranean structures, Lin's project pinpointed several promising areas. Yet, while it established a new standard for respectful, science-driven exploration, the ultimate prize, the tomb itself, remained undiscovered. Decades before this digital quest, another monumental effort unfolded. Beginning in 1989, a joint team of Japanese and Mongolian archaeologists launched the Three Rivers Expedition. They surveyed vast tracts of land along the Onon, Kerlan, and Toul rivers, a region considered the heartland of the Mongol Empire, where its nobility was believed to have lived and died. Over years of tireless investigation, the expedition identified approximately 1,380 potential aristocratic burial sites. Their work provided unprecedented insight into Mongol mortuary customs, confirming that elite graves were concentrated in specific geographic zones. But despite this breakthrough, the final sanctuary of Genghis Khan remained elusive. The team's efforts highlighted the immense challenge: finding one singular tomb intentionally concealed among a multitude of similar sites. It was a search not for a needle in a haystack, but for one specific needle in a vast stack of other, nearly identical needles. Perhaps the most relentless single figure in this epic search was an American lawyer turned modern-day adventurer, Maury Kravitz. For more than 40 years, Kravitz dedicated his life to the quest. He mounted over a dozen expeditions into Mongolia, forging deep relationships with local scholars and communities. Unlike those who relied heavily on technology, Kravitz pursued a fusion of ancient texts, personal intuition, and grueling fieldwork. He held the conviction that the tomb was camouflaged by natural terrain, its location dictated by ancient ritual. Despite his unwavering passion, Kravitz never found the tomb. But his missions unearthed something else: stories of supernatural interference, strange occurrences that wove a new layer of myth into the search. Locals, and even his own team members, reportedly experienced unsettling dreams and suffered from sudden, inexplicable illnesses. The hunt for a single grave has become a testament to the enduring power of a secret. It is a story not of discovery, but of the search itself, a collision of science and spirit, ambition and reverence. The ground holds its silence, reminding those who seek that some legacies are defined not by what is found, but by what remains forever beyond our reach. They encountered inexplicable equipment failures, tales that fueled the belief the tomb was shielded not merely by secrecy, but by a spiritual barrier that resisted all intrusion. But just as the world believed it was closing in, the mystery took a stunning turn. A shocking revelation emerged. The true location of the conqueror's tomb might lie nowhere near where anyone was looking. Among the legion of scholars dedicated to the secret of Genghis Khan, one name stands apart, defined by an audacious and controversial theory. Alan Nichols, an American researcher and a former president of the Explorers Club, put forth a hypothesis that challenged centuries of conviction. While most expeditions focused their efforts around Burkhan Khaldun, the sacred mountain traditionally linked to the Khan's death, Nichols proposed a radical departure. He argued the emperor's final resting place was hidden atop a remote and unexplored peak he cryptically called Mountain X. Nichols did not arrive at this conclusion lightly. His theory was forged from years of research, a painstaking analysis of historical records and geographical clues. What made his proposal so astonishing was its dramatic shift in focus, away from northeastern Mongolia to a region far closer to the Yellow River in Inner Mongolia. This land, rich with history and vast tracts of unexplored territory, became the center of one of Nichols's most clandestine expeditions. To test his theory, Nichols assembled a small, trusted team. They were armed with an arsenal of modern tools, including ground-penetrating radar and magnetometers, instruments capable of detecting anomalies beneath the Earth's surface, revealing potential man-made structures or burial chambers without ever breaking ground. The results were tantalizing. In several locations within the search area, the equipment registered unusual subterranean structures, hinting at the presence of hidden chambers or artifacts. But these findings were never fully published, adding yet another layer of enigma to his work. What made the Nichols expedition even more compelling was its profound secrecy. Operating in a politically sensitive region near the Yellow River meant navigating a complex web of local authorities and government officials. The area was a landscape of military zones, restricted access points, and innumerable layers of bureaucratic oversight. Nichols understood the geopolitical consequences of his search and ensured his activities proceeded with minimal attention. There were no large crews, no public announcements, no media coverage. It suggests that some secrets are protected not by ancient curses, but by the silent, watchful eyes of the modern world, buried deeper than any tomb could ever be. Each step was a calculated move in the shadows, meticulously planned to avoid the glare of unwanted attention. This was a secrecy that transcended political borders. Even within the cloistered circles of archaeology, the lead researcher, Nichols, was known for guarding the details of his findings with a fierce and unwavering resolve. To his critics, it was a troubling lack of transparency, but to others, it was a necessary and respected caution, a shield against the cultural and diplomatic firestorm that could erupt around the final resting place of a national hero. Nichols understood that a premature announcement could ignite civil unrest, even provoke disputes between nations laying claim to the legacy of Genghis Khan. And then it came. The most anticipated, the most stunning moment in this centuries-long epic. A breakthrough that unearthed findings so strange, they defied all imagination. After generations of speculation and decades of scientific pursuit, the long-hidden tomb, believed to belong to the great Khan himself, was finally discovered. It was a moment immediately described as the single most significant archaeological event of modern times, the potential closing chapter to one of history's most profound and enduring mysteries. The excavation did not happen overnight. It was the result of painstaking coordination, a delicate collaboration between several international organizations and the government of Mongolia. Given the immense cultural and historical gravity of the site, opening the tomb required the formal sanction of the Mongolian state, the direct supervision of UNESCO, and the monitoring of United Nations representatives to guarantee that every action conformed to global heritage standards and the ethical codes of research. Every step leading to the unsealing was dictated by caution and precision. Teams of researchers and government officials agreed upon protocols to prevent any disrespect toward Mongolian traditions. Alongside the Mongolian Ministry of Culture, experts in history, anthropology, and religious studies were consulted. The goal was to strike a perfect balance between scientific investigation and cultural reverence. Only after this exhaustive consideration was the operation initiated. A small team, equipped with advanced instrumentation, entered the site under the watchful eyes of international observers and local community leaders. Inside, they discovered a large and complexly arranged burial chamber. The architecture itself was a map of conquest, reflecting influences from the many regions the Mongol Empire had touched. Stone slabs engraved with Pawe. Within the chamber lay a multitude of funerary objects, each offering a glimpse into the life and legacy of the individual buried here. Among them were richly decorated weapons and ceremonial armor, ancient scrolls, and vessels still holding the preserved foods of a world long past. Here, in the quiet dark, these objects were more than treasure. They were the last echoes of a singular will that had bent the world to its vision. The discovery was not merely the end of a search, but the beginning of a conversation with history itself. A dialogue reminding us that the greatest legacies are not built of stone, but of memory, and that the past, once unearthed, is never truly silent.
The state of the object spoke of a chamber sealed with almost unimaginable care. Within this inviolate sanctum, perhaps the most profound discovery was the presence of human remains. The skeleton appeared consistent with what experts would expect of a male military leader from the early 13th century. Cradled by the cool subterranean dark and the tomb's hermetic seal, the bones were remarkably well preserved. Nearby, fragments of opulent textiles lay in repose, some still bearing patterns undimmed by the passage of ages. With delicate precision, these threads of a forgotten empire were retrieved, each piece placed into a protective vessel for analysis. Once the artifacts and remains were removed, a new chapter of inquiry began. Scientists employed radiocarbon dating, searching for a whisper of time from the organic material. The results converged on a date that echoed through history: 1227, the very year of Genghis Khan's death. It was a powerful argument that this was, at last, his final resting place. Analysis of ancient DNA was performed on the bones themselves. While researchers could not compare it to a known sample of the Great Khan, they unveiled genetic markers tying the individual to Central Asian populations, a finding that perfectly aligned with the historical record of Mongol lineage. The fabrics, too, were subjected to intense scrutiny. Examination of the fibers revealed the use of silk and wool, woven with techniques typical of both Mongol and Chinese craftsmanship. This confluence of cultural elements further solidified the identity of the tomb's occupant as a figure who had united vast and disparate regions. The excavation did more than unearth physical artifacts. It opened a window into a world long since vanished. Each object told a story. The tomb's contents displayed not only immense wealth and power, but the spiritual beliefs and cultural complexities of an era. This was not merely a grave, but a message preserved in time. While the identity of the remains is still debated by some scholars, the evidence gathered is a compelling testament to the idea that the tomb of Genghis Khan has finally been found. Yet, for the Mongolian people, this was no ordinary event. It was something far deeper. This was not just history being excavated. It was the spirit of their greatest ancestor, rising once more. The discovery sent a tremor through the heart of a nation, a wave of emotion and controversy that rippled across the globe. For many Mongols, it was not an archaeological curiosity, but a profoundly spiritual and cultural moment touching the core of their identity, a mixture of pride, awe, and deep concern. It was a triumph of history, but also the reawakening of a legend, blurring the line between the man who was and the idea that will forever be. It was at once a monumental discovery and a potential violation of the sacred. In the traditional beliefs of Mongolia, Genghis Khan is not merely a figure of history. He is revered as a near-divine ancestor, his legacy woven into the national consciousness, from schoolhouse lessons to national holidays. The thought of his tomb being found stirred a profound reverence, but also a primal fear. Among certain Mongolian communities, whispers began to circulate. Whispers of a curse, one that could unleash the end of the world. These fears were rooted in ancient legends, which warned of dire misfortune for any who would disturb the final rest of the Great Khan. The stories spread with the swiftness of a steppe wind, Some believed that opening the tomb could trigger political cataclysm, natural disasters, or a profound spiritual imbalance. Others saw it as a defiance of the ancestors themselves, who had willed the tomb to remain hidden for so long.
Beyond these spiritual perils, the discovery unearthed sensitive questions of national identity. In Mongolia, Genghis Khan is the ultimate symbol of unity, pride, and cultural endurance. His face adorns the currency. His likeness is cast in bronze on government buildings. The fact that his tomb remained concealed was part of the collective narrative, a testament to a deep respect for tradition and the unseen protection of a legacy. Now, as international attention flooded the nation, many Mongolians felt this story was being wrested from their hands. Public debates ignited over who should have the right to study the tomb, who would curate its artifacts, and whether these discoveries should be revealed to the world at all. The political landscape added layers of complexity. In Inner Mongolia, a region of China with a vast ethnic Mongolian population, the news sparked not only cultural pride, but also deep-seated tension. Ethnic Mongolians there have long struggled to preserve their language and traditions under Chinese authority. The idea that the tomb of Genghis Khan might lie within or near their territory became a flashpoint of cultural and political sensitivity. Russia, with its own historic ties to the Mongol Empire and its contemporary influence in Central Asia, also registered its interest, intensifying a regional contest for stewardship over the great Khan's heritage. Meanwhile, in the West, academic circles reacted with unbridled enthusiasm. Historians and archaeologists celebrated the potential confirmation of one of humanity's most significant final resting places. Genghis Khan is studied for his revolutionary military strategies, his systems of governance, and the sheer scale of the empire he forged. To finally possess a tangible link to such a formidable figure promised unprecedented new insights into the past. Western universities, museums, and research institutes saw not a curse, but a key to unlocking the secrets of a man who had redrawn the map of the world. The tomb, whether real or imagined, had become more than an archaeological site. It was a mirror, reflecting the anxieties of a nation, the ambitions of global powers, and the unquenchable thirst for knowledge. It forced a confrontation between the world that seeks to unearth and analyze, and the world that believes some things are best left to the silence of the earth. Discussions of partnership began almost immediately. The promise of DNA research, of future studies built upon the findings, echoed with scientific excitement. But even this enthusiasm was tempered by caution, as a powerful reminder emerged of the profound cultural sensitivity surrounding the tomb. A stark contrast was drawn in the earth itself, the line between scientific curiosity and cultural reverence. For the Mongolian people, it was a moment of deep reflection. Was this the culmination of a historic quest, or the violation of sacred ground? For the rest of the world, it was a lesson that the past is never merely a collection of artifacts. It lives in the identity, the beliefs, and the very spirit of the people who carry its weight into the present. This was no ordinary discovery. It had the power to reshape our understanding of history, and it was already beginning to alter the future in ways no one could have anticipated. The unearthing of what is believed to be the tomb of Genghis Khan stunned the world. Yet beyond the initial awe, it opened a floodgate of complex questions, of ethics, of legacy, of preservation, and of the future of historical inquiry itself. As scientists yearned to study the ancient bones and relics, a deeper question loomed. How should humanity handle a discovery that is at once a priceless historical treasure and a sacred site? Among the most pressing issues is the ethical dilemma. This place is not simply an archaeological marvel. It holds immense spiritual significance for the Mongolian people. For centuries, the tomb remained untouched, protected by tradition, by secrecy, and by myth. Many believe the ground is holy, and that its disturbance will have spiritual consequences. Legends speak of curses that could be unleashed, and some fear that breaching the tomb has already upset a fragile spiritual balance. For them, this is not about exploring the past, but about respecting the soul of their nation. The very act of excavation forces the question: should the pursuit of knowledge ever come at the cost of desecrating sacred land? Here, the stewardship of heritage comes into sharp focus. The responsibility for what comes next now lies not only with archaeologists, but with the Mongolian government, spiritual leaders, and internationality of the site, while allowing for meaningful research. Talks have begun about the possibility of reburial, a gesture of respect that aligns with Mongolian custom. Others propose a protective structure built over the site, allowing future access without exposing the tomb to damage or decay. One of the most culturally sensitive proposals is to allow the Darkhad, the traditional guardians of the Khan's tombs, to continue their ancestral role. These sacred protectors have passed down their rituals from one generation to the next, a living link to a past that refuses to be silent. Their vigil is a testament to the idea that some histories are not meant to be unearthed, but to be honored, guarded by the enduring power of human memory. The whispers of this discovery rippled far beyond the confines of academia, echoing into the vast expanse of public discourse. On one of the world's most popular forums, the conversation ignited, fueled by a mixture of astonishment and profound curiosity. The sheer scale of the find was contemplated, a revelation that challenges long-held beliefs, threatening to rewrite entire chapters of world history. The dialogue highlighted a modern paradox: the immense power of our technology to unlock ancient secrets, set against the solemn duty to not disturb sacred ground. A question hung in the air. Do the benefits of such a monumental discovery outweigh the risk of desecrating cultural and spiritual traditions? A call for caution was urged, a plea for listeners to consider the wider consequences of unearthing mysteries that may have been intentionally concealed. As the debate continues, one truth has become clear. Any future exploration must proceed with extraordinary care. This moment sets a new precedent for archaeology, championing the rise of non-invasive, H-resolution satellite imagery now allow researchers to peer beneath the Earth, to study potential sites without physically breaking the hallowed ground. This respectful approach may well become the new standard, especially in regions so rich with cultural heritage. Another promising frontier lies within the very fabric of life itself: ancient DNA. Scientists now possess the ability to extract genetic information from millennia-old remains without causing their destruction. This could not only confirm the identity of the individual within the tomb, but could trace an entire lineage through the depths of time. Ultimately, this discovery is not merely about the past. It is a test for the present and a profound challenge for the future. It asks humanity to choose wisdom over curiosity, respect over conquest. The tomb may have been located, but what we do next will define how we, in turn, are remembered. For we must ask ourselves if our relentless drive to excavate and catalog every secret is not itself a form of conquest, one eerily similar to that practiced by the very man whose eternal rest we have dared to disturb.